Right, so we have these data models that are implemented using MongoDB, and we're used to be able to connect to the to a database. We're using the library Mongoose. Mongoose is a library that allows us to connect to the database, connect to that database, and then start interacting with it. In this particular case, we have here a user model that can allow us to retrieve all users, find user by IDs, find user by username, create users. So let's play. Let's see if that's still working. All right. Let's see if that still works. Let's go into a test, and let's see if we can retrieve all users. Let's see if that works. All right. We'll do. We'll use user model, and user model has a function there that says find all users. Right. I believe we did that last week. Let's try it out. Let's try out and run. This runs test model. Oops. Let's see. Can't find Mongoose. Notice it has no node module, so it looks like no libraries are installed. Let me install the libraries. We'll do an npm install. What npm install is going to do is going to look at package JSON, see that one of the dependencies is Mongoose. Right? It's going to read this package JSON and it's going to say, oh, your project depends on Mongoose. Let me download that for you. Okay, so I'm going to do npm install. It's going to read that package JSON. And it's going to download Mongoose 5.0.10 and it's going to put it in a new directory here called node modules. There it is. See that? All right, so it downloaded the library. So let's try that again. If we run test model. Yes, maybe, no. Did it work? Let's see. Where is it? Test. What's test doing? Oh, test is running the user model that find all users. It didn't blow up, which is a good thing. What find all user does is that it returns. If you look at the implementation, it returns user model.find. Okay, see that? Unfortunately, find doesn't return just the collection, right? The array of collection. Instead, it returns a promise, right? Because the communication between Mongoose and the actual database is through a network, and it's asynchronous, right? So all these calls are asynchronous, right? So instead, what they return is an object that allows you to register for a callback, right? So what this returns is a promise. That promise returns an object that allows you to register for a callback. So this then function is a function on that promise object instance that comes back from Mongoose, and says, well, if you give me a function, I will call you a little later, right? I will call you when the response comes back from the database server, and I'll send you whatever the server came back with, and we can then display the response. Right. So if we run this again. There it is. So there's our users coming back. Everybody okay? Right. So what we want to be able to do is that we certainly can programmatically hit the database, right? But we want anybody outside our organization, right? We would like to be able to share all this data with other folks outside of our organization, right? Using some of these ideas of web services. Right? So to do that, we'll need to use a middle tier that can map incoming URL HTTP requests and map them to functions like this, right? I like to be able to run this function here, but as a response to a URL inquiry. Okay. All right. So to do that, we'll need one more library. Let's install that library. That library is the Express library, right? The Express library allows me to create that middle tier, right? So let's do an npm install Express -- save. Don't forget the -- save. That downloads the library, but also registers the library as a dependency. Notice that if you go to package JSON now, not only do we have Mongoose, now we have Express listed there. See that? That allows you to folks that want to clone down your project, they can just do an npm install and it installs all the libraries that you need. Okay, so how do we use Express? So Express is very easy to use. Let's look at the documentation. Oops, no, that's not it. So the latest version is 4.0. And to use it is very simple. You just require it and create an instance for it. So let's do that. Let's copy that. And let's create a server that can do this. So let's create a JavaScript file here, and we'll call it server. And this is the server that is going to be listening for incoming requests, right? So we'll paste the Express there. There it is. And then we're gonna listen to listen at port 3000. Okay. That's the in 2 lines of code. That's the simplest HTTP server you can think of. Maybe 2 if you bring these 2 together. Let's create a configuration so we can run it. So we'll say I want to create a new Node.js executable here, and we'll call it server. And I want to run server.js. We say OK. So if we run that. It didn't explode. It is running. The server is actually running. The thing is that it's not doing anything, right? It's not. We can try and hit it with our browser localhost. It's listening at 3000. It's complaining that nothing is mapped to the root, right? You're asking for the root at /. There's nothing mapped to it. I can't find any resource mapped to that. So we can create something mapped to that. We can say app. Map to an incoming GET request, map to the root, right? And if that comes in, if somebody requests for root, say hello, right? And say hello can be a function where what happens here is that Express will intercept that request. It will parse all the incoming headers and cookies and everything that's coming from the client, from the browser. It will package all that data in a nice little object. Well, it's not that little. It's pretty big. In a request object, and it will pass it to us. Very, very nice. It'll pass it to us in this callback function. Right? It will also pass to us another object that will allow us to send something back, respond back to this incoming HTTP, and we can just say responds that we're going to send back a hello. Right? We'll restart the server. Now we refresh. Notice that it comes back with hello. Okay, all right. What you'll find a lot in the literature is that these functions are embedded like that, as anonymous functions with no name. Okay, and this still works the same way. It's very, very common, a very common syntax in JavaScript in general. I happen to hate this syntax. I find it very, very hard to read. I think this is a little bit easier to read. Right. That syntax is very common, at least on the client side, when you're coding with JavaScript. It makes sense over there because you have lots of libraries, and they can trample on each other. And JavaScript, older versions of JavaScript don't have modules or namespaces or anything like that. So if you have lots of libraries on the same namespace, they clobber each other. Right? But here on the server, we do have modules and namespaces, and we don't need to be stingy on function names. Okay, and this is just definitely easier to read. Also, this could be a little bit more a little better like this, where we, instead of mapping it to the root, we map it to an actual something. Right, so we can rerun this. Now, if I try to hit it, notice there's nothing mapped to the root. Instead, we need to map it to an actual URL. Everybody okay? All right, very, very simple. Express, that's all it does. Express just says, I'll be listening for this URL pattern, and when it matches, I'll just execute this function. That's all it does. Right? It's a technology that allows you to interface between 2 worlds. Right? the HTTP world that is coming, right, and map it to a JavaScript world. Okay, it's an interface technology, right? It's an integration technology. All right. Okay, what else can we say? Well, this could say hello, and we can pass in an argument. Hello, who, and we can get a hold of parameters from here from the request. The request allows you to parse parameters that are part of the path. Okay, this colon in front of after the hello is a parameter. It's a parameter that's being passed as part of the path. So it's referred to as a path parameter. Who is a path parameter, right? So notice if I run this again, right, there's nothing mapped to /hello, right? But there's something mapped to /hello, whatever is mapped to that, right? Who now is mapped to this garbage over here, right? What we'd like to be able to do is retrieve that from the path, right? So to parse that, we can retrieve it. Anything that is coming from a client, anything that's coming from a browser is part of the request, right? The URL is part of the request. The IP address from my machine is part of the request. A timestamp, cookies, headers. We can look at what the browser is generating by inspecting it and looking at the network. If we refresh, we'll see exactly what the browser is sending. And we can look at the headers. This is exactly what the browser is sending. It's saying, well, I'm sending to this URL. It's a GET request. These are all the headers that the browser is sending. Okay, and this is the response that is coming back. This is the raw response that is coming back. Just the text hello. All right, so on the server side, we can parse the who from the request params, and we can then say, well, which parameter, and then we can say the who parameter. Okay, and we can then maybe send back who. So if we refresh, we say hello garbage, hello Joe, all right, hello Jane. Everybody okay? All right, so that's a very brief introduction to Express. Let's actually use it now. Let's actually use it to interact with the database. All right. So let's do that next.